This is our annual workshop on guerrilla interviewing, or taking charge of your interview process. This is one of my absolute favorite workshops because so many people fear interviewing, but you need not, because like legal research and writing, it's a skill that can be learned through practice. So let me tell you, when I talk about guerrilla interviewing, just what I mean. Guerrilla interviewing is the state of mind or condition of walking into an interview fully prepared to A, handle any situation, ordinary or unusual, including stress interviews. B, answer questions about weaknesses perceived or real with confidence. C, respond to standard interview questions with ease. And D, to participate in the interview process as an equal. And I'm going to give you 6 techniques that will help you be a part of guerrilla interviewing. Technique number 1 is preparation. We strongly recommend you use the book Guerrilla Tactics for Getting the Legal Job of Your Dreams by Kim Walton. The interview chapter literally will prepare you for anything. Second, I strongly suggest you do a searching inventory into your background and that you identify what you perceive to be any weaknesses, whether they're real weaknesses or ones you just think of as weaknesses. The way to think about weaknesses and the way to spot them is to imagine yourself cringing if you're asked a question that you're really not ready for. When you evaluate yourself to see what you think your weaknesses are, feel free to run those by career services because we can help you understand how to deal with those and how to formulate answers. Let me give you a few examples of questions that have tripped up students in the past that may be weaknesses that you can relate to. Why aren't your grades higher? Why aren't you participating in any law school activities? I see you didn't write for law review. And here's a good one. We actually had a student get this at our school a number of years ago. We have graduates from Harvard, Stanford, and Yale. Why should we hire someone from your school? Now, if you've done your interview preparation, you are going to hit that out of the ballpark instead of being stymied. Because if you've done your preparation, you'll be able to respond in one of 2 ways. You've already hired graduates from our law school. You know we can perform at the same level of those graduates from Harvard, Stanford, and Yale. Or you'll be able to pull out material that you've collected from career services that is marketing material that tells how great our graduates are, so that shouldn't trip you up. A few other weakness questions. Explain why your resume shows that you didn't work from blank to blank date. Well, sir, you don't have any legal experience. Why should my firm hire you? Again, if you've done your preparation, you know that you don't have legal experience, but you do know that you have transferable skills. And those are skills that you can sell to a law firm. Other weaknesses, again, if you haven't prepared. Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? So tell me about yourself. Again, if you've prepared, that shouldn't be a tough question for you. Next technique for preparation. Know your resume and be prepared to discuss every single item on it in a way that's positive. Before you start submitting resumes, you really should go through and edit out anything that is superfluous or that really doesn't show a quality that you think an employer is going to value. But if it's on your resume, you should be able to tell the employer why it's there and what it's going to give them. Next, and this is a huge one, know your own writing sample inside and out. It may be that you haven't looked at it for 6 months and you go into an interview and suddenly the attorney is grilling you about your writing sample and you haven't thought about it. You're going to come across feeling really silly if you're bumbling about instead of being able to talk about your analysis in your writing sample. So make sure you've reviewed it. You've made sure that you understand your own logic, your own analysis, your own conclusions, because you just need to be able to do that so that you feel comfortable through the process. Next, know your employer. If you are interviewing with a firm and you say, I'm really interested in practicing criminal defense, and that firm doesn't have a criminal defense practice, how do you think you're going to feel? How do you think they're going to feel? So know your employer and know why you're interviewing with your employer. It's so easy these days to do your research in advance so that you understand the employer and what they're looking for. Use web pages to review information about law firms and organizations. If you're looking at private firms, use the Martindale-Hubbell directory. If you're using, or again, looking at private firms, you want to look at the National Directory of Legal Employers. You can also use Google very effectively to find out information about organizations. Simply, there is no excuse for going into an interview not knowing information about the employer. And last, this is probably the best interview tip I can give you, and that is this. Practice saying your answers to standard interview questions out loud. I'm not suggesting that you memorize your answers. What I'm suggesting is that you get comfortable using the language and responding to those hard questions like, tell me about yourself. Because if you've taken the time to answer that question out loud 10 times, when the interviewer asks you that question, you're not going to feel nervous. It's just going to come out. Now, I don't want you to get to the level of feeling rehearsed, but you should know standard interview questions inside and out. Basically, think of it this way. You can predict 90% of the questions that are going to be asked in an interview. And what you want to be able to do is answer those with confidence and poise. And talking out loud is going to help you do that. All right. I next want to move into talking about when interviews can go bad, or when they can be a situation that you simply haven't expected. Because if you have anticipated the unexpected, you will come through it feeling far better than if you just go into this thinking it's going to be a smooth ride and everything's going to go okay. So I'm going to highlight 5 different situations that can come up in interviewing that I want you to think about in advance. First is stress interviews. There are a number of techniques that sometimes interviewers will employ in order to see simply how you're going to respond if they pull these tricks. The first one is silence. Tell me, what do you think you're going to do if you walk into an interview room, shake hands, introduce yourself to the interviewer, and he or she kicks back in her chair and says, so, nothing. They don't say a word, they just stare at you. What are you going to do in that situation? Well, if you've done your preparation through Guerilla Tactics, what you're going to do is you're going to launch into your infomercial. You're going to quickly say, oh, this is a stress interview and my interviewer isn't going to say anything. I have to carry the interview. You're going to launch into your infomercial and you're going to say, so let me tell you about myself. Next form of stress interview is hostility. This can happen when you have an interviewer who, for whatever reason, just isn't buying what you say. He or she may be critical of your school, of any answers you give. If they ask why your grades aren't higher and you give a real confident answer, they may pick you apart. You just don't know what to do right. There are a couple of things you can do in that situation. You could hit the situation head on by saying something like, it seems like my answers are irritating you. Is there something I can do to be more responsive? Or, I seem to have irritated you. Can we start over? The other technique you can do is to just simply get through it. You've got 20 minutes for many of these interviews, and so it would involve just saying, okay, this isn't going well. I'm going to keep doing my best. I'm going to keep a positive attitude, but hey, in 15 minutes I'm out of here, so I'm just going to go with the flow. The next form of a stress interview is when the interviewer shows boredom. Again, sometimes this is a technique. Sometimes the interviewer might be legitimately really tired after a string of interviews. A couple ways you can deal with this. It must be tiring interviewing all these candidates. Would you be interested in taking a short walk while we talk? Another thing you can do to head off the bored interviewer is if you're interviewing late in the afternoon, and again, this might go over well in some situations, it might not in others, you could actually show up to the interview and offer the interviewer a cup of coffee. I've known students who have done that before with great results. Haven't heard of any negative results, but that's not to say they're not out there. Okay, next special situation I want to review with you is the talkative interviewer. How do you think you're going to handle the interviewer who never stops talking? You've got a 20-minute time period to make an impression. This guy never comes up for air. So, couple different techniques. If they stop stop their discussion and then say, do you have any questions? You have two choices. You can say, let me tell you about myself, and launch into your infomercial. You can say something like, I've done a lot of research on your firm and have a general sense of its advantages. What I'd really like to know is what you like about the firm. That's a good way also to get the interviewer talking about him or herself. Next special situation is the interviewer who only wants to know if you have questions. This actually happened in an on-campus interview at this law school a few years ago, and virtually every student was in my office going, I had no idea what to do. I ran out of questions after 5 minutes. So it's a very disconcerting situation. What you can do in this situation is turn the interview on the interviewer, but you have to be ready for it. So you want to be prepared to ask a lot of detailed questions about the law firm that aren't obvious from the web, and about the interviewer, him or herself. So you could also ask things about, how about the effect of recent salaries? Has it generated firms wanting more billable hours out of people? Ask what practice areas the firm sees as expanding or needing additional associates. But in any event, the idea is keep asking those questions, because this is a technique and you just need to be prepared for it and to go with the flow. Next special situation is when you have multiple interviewers. What do you do when you walk in and there's 4 or 5 people sitting around a table? My advice, include everybody. Even if you've got somebody very quiet off in the corner, you might start feeling like a bobblehead. But when you answer questions, you want to make eye contact with everybody around the table so that everybody feels included. You don't want to have a situation where you walk out of the room and one of the interviewers says, she never even looked at me once. I don't think I like this candidate. So be inclusive. And next, you may have an interviewer who asks about controversial things or current events and wants to have a more general-based discussion. Try to go with the flow. You should, as part of interview preparation, have read the local newspaper for a couple days. Be up on current events. Be ready to banter. The one thing you may want to be cautious about is taking an overly strong position on a political issue, on a candidate, on anything that is currently raging in controversy. Okay, moving on. Couple other aspects of interviews that people don't often think about that are very important. I urge you to work with your body language so that in your preparations you actually sit in a chair, put on your suit, practice putting your hands in your lap, and learning that confident body language of sitting up straight. As you practice saying interview questions out loud, make sure you're not doing this that shows that you're feeling insecure. That will carry through in the interview. Make sure if you're a guy and if you're standing up, you're not doing this number. So just practice body language so you feel confident and poised. The other aspect of body language that is vital, practice your handshakes. So for men, I want you to practice a firm handshake that's not bone crushing. Women, you need to practice your handshakes as well so that they are very firm, but again, you don't have to hurt the other person's hand, just make it a firm handshake. Now, this may sound sexist, but I have to put this out there for you men in the crowd. Please do not shake a woman's hand any different than you shake a man's hand. None of these sort of little flaky, fishy handshakes. That's going to be a huge turnoff. Women in law firms are powerful women. Give them that level of respect. by using your body language in a way that communicates the same respect you would communicate to a male attorney. A few other considerations. Don't stop at just thinking about interview questions and answers. Remember, an interview is an exchange, and it starts when you walk in the door. So make sure that you have something positive to say. Walk in, practice introducing yourself. Hi, I'm Jane Steckbeck. I'm very delighted to be interviewing with your firm today. Thank you for having me. Something like that. Practice a powerful, strong, confident, happy type of opening. The other thing is, don't forget to prepare a closing. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting with you today. I would love to come and work for your firm. Again, practice it so that when you do it, it comes out very confident, very poised, so that you don't leave the interview in a situation where you just kind of get up and leave. You don't want to do that. A few tips on what to take or carry. This is a professional level interview. Don't even think about walking in with a backpack. That's a flat out no. What you want to do is use a professional portfolio, leather, you can fold it open or use a briefcase. You want to pack a few things in that portfolio, such as extra resumes. You might run an extra writing sample in case somebody didn't get one at the firm and they might want to take a look at it. You want to make sure you have your reference list handy. You shouldn't have to have a cover letter, but it's never a bad idea to take one. If you're doing a day-long callback at the firm, make sure you take some chapstick. You can get chapped lips in a matter of hours if you're talking to a lot of people, and it can be a very, very uncomfortable situation. And for women, if you are wearing a skirt suit, it is inviting absolute disaster to not carry an extra pair of pantyhose. So just take care of a few basics there. A few other considerations. If you are traveling, make sure you know exactly where you're going. Make sure to factor in extra time so that if there's a traffic situation, you're not sitting on the freeway when you're supposed to be interviewing. That happens, and it happens every year. If you build in extra travel time, you're less likely for that to happen to you. Make sure you know about parking, and if you're going to have to pay going in, make sure you've got change for meters, and that you just know the lay of the land. The last thing you want is when you are walking into an interview to be stressed out because you didn't know where to park, or because you couldn't find the place, or because there was road construction and you sat on the highway longer than you expected to. So just be prepared for all those little quirky things that can trip you up. A few comments about resources. If you're viewing this podcast, you'll be able to download 2 of the handouts we use for interviewing. We also strongly recommend that book I mentioned, The Guerilla Tactics for Getting the Legal Job of Your Dreams. That's the basis of this presentation. And we have a number of other interviewing resources in the Career Services Office. We recommend that, as well as participating either in the formal mock interview program or doing mock interviews with one of the Career Services individuals who are trained to do mock interviews. So that's all I have for you today. Very glad that you were here, and I hope this helps you prepare for very effective guerrilla interviewing. Thank you.